My name is Allison Pulowski, and I'm here with K-Rise System. Thank you for joining us today for our EasyPay webinar for JDE Payments and Automation and PCI Security. There is a chat feature in the bottom right. Please feel free to utilize that if you have any questions throughout the webinar. We will do our best to get those answered during the webinar. However, if it's in more detail, we will contact you when we are done. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Doug.
Allison, thank you, and everyone, thank you very much for taking your valuable time to making the decision to spend your next hour on this webinar, where I'm going to be talking about everything JD Edwards payments, payments being beyond AR terms, PO number and conventional invoices. It could include credit cards and e-check, and there's even other forms of what falls under payments. It's a growing area, obviously, and more companies that used to be just, basic AR terms are finding that they need payments functionality. A typical scenario that I've found is, they get up to 50, 60, and they're doing it manually, going to the gateway terminal and entering the card in, and then going, say, finance, and going back to call center or CSR and say, yeah, go ahead and move it to print pick slip. But the scenarios are vary widely, but generally it's enabling it from JD Edwards. My background is a lot of JD Edwards. I worked as a JD Edwards pre-sales consultant in 1997, 22 years ago, well, 23 years ago now, got to remember what year it is. And I left JD Edwards in 2002, and I've been in the industry since then. So I was there when One World was PeopleSoft that changed it to Enterprise One in 2003, was introduced, and that brings up a good point. This application I'm going to show you works with Enterprise One in a lot of different ways in terms of the integration. We work through master business functions. We do parameterized SQL queries. I'll kind of get into the details of that, our architecture, and we're platform-based, like JD Edwards. Everything JD Edwards apps is based on tools. So with that, I've got a lot to cover. I want to get right to the demo, and if I go to my Chrome browser, you can see I have JD Edwards, and I'm going to do various use case scenarios. I've got, the email for updating me with notifications. I've got the portal that I want to review. And so from the perspective of the slides, I do need to kind of set the background, but I want to go through them real quick. Allison's going to package up the slide deck. So in order to cover all the scenarios, in fact, all the use case scenarios I'm going to be covering, I'm going to focus initially on JD Edwards. That's when I say JDE ERP, I'm talking about inside of JD Edwards, sales orders and invoices. The AR portal is an optional approach. So first use case scenario with JD Edwards, people say they want their CSRs, their call center folks, to be heads down and manage payments from that angle. AR portal is outside of JD Edwards. In all cases, we deliver an AR portal, whether it's separately. And then tied to e-commerce, it could be our e-commerce. We've done implementations with Magento. Everything I'm going to be showing you, we take an API first, per what Gartner says that you should look at these days from any software application. I can even show examples of that. I'm not going to have time to get into like work orders. Oops, didn't mean to do that. So work orders, we have a customer and they have non-warranted radios that they repair, and they want to get paid after they're fixed, before they sent out. We look at the work order. We recognize it's not warranted. We do a workflow process to the customer for payments. You'll see an example of these workflows, and the real estate. It's just too much to cover. Even, returns and back orders and all of the use case scenarios revolving, say, decline at order crate, decline at the settlement, say the ship stage, but I'm going to be able to cover the basis, which you should get a lot out of. About KRise, we've been around for 15 years. We're a platform company, so we do more than e-commerce and payments, although payments is one of our primary practice areas. We're very, very good at it. We have all of the certifications with Oracle. We're gold status. We do everything through Quest in regards to Collaborate next April, and Infocus in Denver, and user groups. And we deliver many, many other solutions because of our platform. We're a low-code platform company, so a lot of people come to us as, you know, can you do custom projects? And absolutely, we're one of the best options for that. Procurement. I'm not going to focus on that. I'm just going to stress that when you invest in EasyPay, you're also investing in a platform that can allow you to do many other things. And even just from the EasyPay perspective, there's distinct advantages by KRise not being a Java or .NET or C# or PHP deliverable solution, but being platform-based. Many customers, all referenceable. You see, and these are all JD Edwards. We've got, you know, Chevron and Yum Brands. Yum Brands uses us extensively, 2 Fortune 500, Fox Network over on the left. And then JD Edwards is made up of SMB, and obviously we have a lot in that category. This is what I'm going to go through as soon as I get done. So I'm going to refer back to this slide, and I'm going to start out with various use case scenarios, and I'll go through them one by one. So I'll review this slide in detail in just a second. And when you think about an order transaction, from a sales order, from an invoice perspective, from a sales order transaction, you have to look at it as workflow. In fact, our EasyPay is based on a workflow concept, and it's tied to, you know, sales order, create. We have an E1 9.2 environment that's very simplified. The sales order activity rules, but we would implement against yours, obviously, which would be more complex than this. But generally speaking, our touch points, say in a sales order transaction, it's at create. And for most companies, it's just do an authorization. Just verify that the card is good. I get an approval number. There's enough funds. And then like Amazon, when you come to shipping it, that's the second part of the credit card transaction, the shipment. And then the reconciliation batch AR update is the third area. And very quickly, like I said, I'm only going to focus initially on sales orders, P4210 and power forms. We do work against, you know, the service contract and work orders, like I mentioned, and tenants and real estate. But you're going to see this level of integration as I go through. And also some of the use case scenarios. We work with all the payment gateways. This is Authorize.net, which is owned by Visa, which is a CyberSource company. And you need a gateway for card not present. So think about it. This is not the grocery store where you've got a terminal or the gas station and a card not present. You need the gateway as an intermediary, so to speak, to get to the payment network to work against issuing card, et cetera, the various banks involved in the transactions, plural, to get either the approval or denial. And generally speaking, authorize and capture, I think of that as a sale. So when you go into Barnes & Noble, that's what they're doing. They're doing from a transaction an authorized capture sale. For web sales or manufacturers and distributors that we deal with, it's two separate, like I overviewed. At order create, it's authorize, and say shipment. It could be anything. We're tying to status codes, hold codes. We can tie to a UBE. So how these are applied are based on your requirements. But generally speaking, and I've got Tom, our product manager here, generally speaking, it's status codes, Tom, right? And a lot of people do use hold codes. What people like with status codes to trigger these credit card transactions is they can get better, and we can deliver better reporting visibility.
Yeah, a lot more flexibility.
Okay, sounds good. And once again, we're agnostic. So unlike one of our competitors that they want to write up a contract with you for gateway and processing and collect the fee. We take an agnostic position. We're developers with various, Chase, Payment Tech, and Christie's auction uses Adyen. They're a big client of ours. Of course, PayPal. But we take this agnostic. So you create the contract. You make decisions. You can switch. A lot of people, annually or every few years, look at the marketplace because those fees can impact, and what I'm talking about is the 2.6% more with American Express, strongly impact your profit margin, and I'll be touching on that too, because gateways or separately, we can deliver ACH. So by and North America is ACH, it's e-check, it's the routing, bank number, and that eliminates the high fees associated with credit cards. And that's an option too, I'll show that. Some acronyms, PCI, that's the consortium. Going back 15 years ago, they all had separate ones, the various card players. Now it's the PCI-DSS consortium. Cardholder data, when you get into cybersecurity, and we're going to be talking about that, that's you're a merchant. That's your liability. When you ask your customers for their card information, it's like Social Security. It's toxic data, and we'll be talking about that and how we work with that. Cardholder data environment, this product can be deployed on-prem or SaaS. Our primary SaaS provider is AWS. We've implemented this, like Lutron is a customer of ours, and they have a Microsoft Azure, so we made it work seamlessly with Azure SQL. It's a version of normal SQL, and Oracle, OCI, Oracle, Rackspace. So we support any data center, but our preference for we have managed services actually through Rackspace with AWS. It's and I mention that because when you get into the 12 requirements and the 400 controls of PCI, the data environment touches on a lot of them, like passwords and antivirus and things like that. So getting into the PCI requirements, I'm going to be showing this. I'm going to go by it because I want to get to it. Validations, because we're a platform. We're not delivering you EasyPay as a .NET or Java. We're delivering it on a platform. Both our low-code rapid development platform and the EasyPay application that it's written in. Once again, think JDE apps, tools, it's the same thing. But both are certified by JD Edwards. This is important because JD Edwards gives KRISE JDE System 99 codes. We own the JDE System 99 codes. JDE development is aware of us. They like companies like us because they don't have the payments functionality native in E1, and you're not going to have object conflicts and issues like that. Trustway. So you need an auditor. When you're working with PCI, you need an auditor, and it's called a QSA, Qualified Security Assessor, and either you're a payment application and you're dealing with encryption, or you're a service provider and you're using cyber-source techniques like iframe redirect, which is hosted payment page, client-side encryption, client is the processor, or point-to-point encryption. We're no longer doing encryption, so we work with Trustwave, and every 3 months, is there an issue?
Question.
Okay, well, let me get through this, and then I'll do a pause. And then every 3 months, Trustwave does the scans on our AWS, and we point to other URLs. So that's what the PCI angle is. I can't help but emphasize the platform angle of KRISE. We're out there competing with low-code platform sector is becoming big. The need for apps, web apps across companies are so big that companies, IT departments are looking at the low-code, no-code platforms, and we are one of them. EasyPay is based on Easy Process. You can basically say EasyPay is simply the various components of Easy Process, And it's a platform that allows customizations and personalizations without the penalty, it's hard to upgrade, or it delivers no vendor lock. Half of our customers have lean IT, they come to us for turnkey. The other half, they do take over some level of development ownership, some 100%. And so once again, easy process. For EasyPay, I strongly recommend the SaaS cloud pricing deployment. I'm not going to get into the tool set other than a couple of quick screenshots. So this is what low code is. This is, working in application, the data source, the GUI composed of grids and tablets and literally pull down over. You can see in this screenshot we're bringing in a tab functionality. There's properties to work with CSS and JavaScript. So this would be like the data source and the GUI representation of our platform. This right here is more about the data source, and obviously, a date-time conversion. You've got to do that with JD Edwards, Julian converting to, but this is a part of the application that's all done in a Visio drag and drop widget type manner. Here you're seeing logic. So the prior was data source. This is logic with binary decisions. We have a lot of companies that got, say, Salesforce.com, and they want our applications. We've got Salesforce services. We've got 450 services. That's what you're seeing on the left, like database services. And so we're more and more we're getting into working with different and multiple source of records, and we can do it. Then you just plug everything together, and this is the application like EasyPay that I'm going to show you. We do a lot of other things. Oh, and by the way, this is Christie's. So I'm going to show you a demo environment, but Christie's was an example. Everything I'm showing you is available as an API. So Christie's, their business case back in 2016 was their My Christie's auctioning and bidding didn't have payments functionality. And so we enabled that from an API. So this is My Christie's. This is our software embedded as APIs working against JD Edwards. They use the Audion payment processor. And that's pretty much it. And did you say there was a question?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Let's see. The main question is if there's something on back order.
Great question.
That is not part of the initial charge on the credit card.
Yeah.
This item is shipped days later. How do you manage the credit card authorization?
That's a great question. So our authorization executables, authorization and settlement executables, they have to be intelligent, because what that question is citing is order change. You'd say you create an order and it goes through change, such as adding items, deleting items. Now that wasn't the question, but we can say go out and you change it. We want to add additional authorization and do it in an automated fashion. But what you're talking about is, shipment with at the line level with certain items shipped and taking some percentage of the authorization and doing a settlement on that. And Tom, that's all. Maybe you're better as our product manager. That's all taken care of inside of our admin in terms of the processing options,
yeah, it's
right?
very configurable, very easy to configure. You can set it up to do including the backorder items on the authorization, or you could always do a separate authorization once they come off backorder based on line statuses. If for some reason, the backorder items are more than what was authorized, we could do a sale for the difference. There's many different scenarios.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this slide and I'm going to start the demo, because I wanted to keep it at 10 minutes and I went 19 minutes. Shame on me. So the first use case scenario is this. Inside of JD Edwards, inside the P4210, this is JDE Interactive. So this is the CSR enters, it works with the payment profile directly, or they can email it. And I'm using account 4646 for that. And before let me just go back to the demo here. Let me do, and I might be logged out. Nope. So sold to 4646. So I'm going to do a crate here. Now the crate is sales order 303-707. Now if I look at additional header information, the payment terms is credit card. I have I'm in Firefox right now. So if I go to 4646, you can see the payment terms in AR in the address book is defaulted to credit card. So that's what's telling me, getting back here from the, from the order, is that I pull that. Now I can come in here and change it. It could be net 30 and you can change it to credit card, but I just want to explain that going through these use case scenarios tied to the address books, that's what I'm doing. So if I entered an order in here, M001, and I do a crate. Now with this one, and I'm actually going to do a remove on a card there. With this one, the payment pad comes up. So this is what we call JDE Sales Order Interactive. The CSR, the call center person, could be on the phone. They're working in the sales order. They created the header. They created the line item details. But because payment terms said CC, we're coming here. And I'm not going to get into the details. If I did a question mark, this would be a PQ99 form tied to, owning those system codes. I won't get into the technical details here. Let's just do the use case scenario now of the CSR, and maybe they're on the phone and the customer said, and they go, oh, we have 111 set up. And this is a token that you're seeing there. And the customer said, no, I want you to use a new card. So the card could be e-check, like I'm showing here, or it could be credit card. So let's just do Doe Pulaski and come down here. Now, what I want to do here is I actually want to, there we go. So where I'm typed, this is cardholder data. This is the toxic information. If I do view frame source, do you see where I'm at right here? This is, and Tom, why don't you explain? This is iframe redirect, right?
Yeah, this is being typed directly to the payment gateway.
Right. So once again, when PCI talks about cardholder data, they basically say, what are you doing with cardholder data? From a processing, from a transmit, from a storage. Now storage is tokenizing it and delivering back the token, which is not cardholder data, and that's really what I'm doing right here. So I come in here and I enter, I'm entering a payment profile at CyberSource. Now, what I'm returning back is a token. So what just happened there is the CSR entered the credit card information, created that payment profile. Now, notice down here, email link to customer. More and more people are saying, no, we want to remove entirely toxic cardholder data from our premise, even from the perspective of PCI gets into people. 10 years ago, you'd go into a call center and they'd be taking credit card information and reading the numbers back. You can't do that anymore. That's not PCI compliant. You're subject to eavesdropping and a breach. So you can't do things like that. So I'll show you email link in a second here. I'm just going to take that profile that I just created, and I'm going to process it. And one of two things happened. I'm working through the gateway, and either I'm going to get success or denial. And I got success, and you see that there. And if I was to come here to the sales order, 303-707, And we can see a couple of things here. The sales order is parked at 520, 532. So that's based on authorization success. And this is about the only thing you need to do to your JD Edwards is you need to change, we could do it by purely through hold codes. And some people prefer that, but you know, we take a status code approach. That's what you would have to do. And for us, 532 represents successful authorization. Now, if I was to come in here and look at orders, here's an EasyPay row exit. And this is us being in there, and there's the status. So it's at 532, the row exit is there, and from this perspective, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from order to cash. And I've got a quick way of doing it. Bear with me. I'm going to do a submit. So I'm running through sales update and, ship confirmation and sales update and invoice create. That's what I just did there. I want to move the order forward. So that from the perspective, I should be getting the emails, right? Yeah. Okay. So now let's go back to that order, and we'll wait for the email to come. So let's take a look at that order now that I ran sales update, 303707. And I look, and we can see that the status now is 999, the last status. It's closed. If I was to look at the online invoice, oops, helps if I select it. So if I was to go down here to online invoice, there's the invoice. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go to, oh, wrong one. There we go. So if I was to come here, you can see that it's not open. It's paid. And if I was to go to the status, whoops, there it is right there. There's the payment ID. There's there's the batch number. So you can see the batch AR update process was fully completed. And if I was to now go back to, I accidentally opened up a few others. And if I was to now look at the EasyPay, you can see the statuses that are settled. Before it was at authorized. And by the way, this is fully enabled within JD Edwards. So that's the first use case scenario. If I was to, I'm not going to be as detailed there. You can see, you know, how we're working against JD Edwards. The pieces, if I was to create another order and same customer, so branch plan M30, 4646, create the sales order, 708. All right, so I finalized the sales order. So now I'm going to get into the workflow process. So in this particular case, if I was to enter Doug Pulaski. And do email link to customer. It tells me that was sent. Now the next use case scenario will be just the email going natively. So I'm going to come back here. And by the way, this is telling me with the first order, I'm getting the notifications that it was successful, the delayed capture. When I fully paid the invoice through the credit card, through the batch AR update, it created this, the paid invoice with the history. So this is being sent internally or to the customer. Now this is the next order. This is the CSR, same customer 4646, I want to email it. And so this is that customer then coming in here and noting payment, process payment. So think about this. This is completely outside your local area network. It's basically an email going to the customer. The customer is working against EasyPay inside of AWS, working through iframe, what's called hosted payment page, creating the payment profile. What we return after the profile is created, like I said, this is a token that's not toxic. It's just representing the last 4 digits for identification purposes. We've got a configuration parameter that says you can add nicknames, which is another column if you want to do that. So more and more people are concerned about this, and this went through. I'm not going to bother to process it through, but let's now go back here to the next use case scenario. So I completed this. I did JD Edwards Interactive, the CSR entered it directly or from email. So I showed, like with an authorization, somebody asked about authorization logic tied to partial ship, split lines, in other words, in JD Edwards. And the authorization logic can also extend to like a $0 or $1 authorization. This is B2B usually what we're doing, and a lot of companies are saying it's not like B2C where you want to put a hold on those funds. So people say, you know what, just do a $0 or $1. We know the funds are there. They're established customers. The traditional, and within B2C, it's full authorization. So what's the definition of full authorization? It's the sum of the line items on the sales order plus a fudge. And fudge can be generated a number of different ways unless you can calculate, say, the freight lines, tax implications, and we do that with customers. We can, as a matter of fact, do online invoice and do things like that. So, but the full authorization, let's work through that one right now, 61840. So if I come back to JD Edwards, and let's do another order. And 618. So I'm creating sales order 709. I just created the header. I haven't created the line items. Let me show you additional header here. This is payment term C1, which is credit card full authorization, pulled from the AR in the address book. So if I was to enter, and let's enter a couple of line items. Now, the screen doesn't come up because we're doing this through workflow. And one thing I do want to mention, so that email will be coming to me shortly. And in the meantime, I do want to show you one aspect of our AR portal. Our AR portal can be used by employees, and that's what I'm doing. The login Max Bourne is an internal employee going into reports. So that previous order number, 303707, If I was to do a search on it, and there's the details. So that was that prior order where interactive, but you can see here, and the way I like to picture this is EasyPay is essentially middleware software. It's managing JD Edwards sales order throughout order to cash or invoice or work orders, whatever the transaction is, while also holistically working against the payment gateway and the payment processors that you're doing. And so we can see that that order was closed. We can see the transactions. We can see the 2 line items that are generated there. There is that invoice that I went into with showing you payment and batch number. So everything is inside of this console here, and it's also in JD Edwards via the like the row exits. So we have other additional row exits. So still waiting for the email, Tom.
What was the payment term? C1?
C1, right.
That should be running.
Okay. So it's a batch process that's running to create that email. That was for order 303708. Okay, so there it is, or it must have been 709, huh? Okay, so it was 709, and if I go to, okay, so this was successfully authorized for the amount of $161. So there's one of 2 emails that's going to occur for the, and let me come back here. It's either going to take an existing token, and if I was to come back here, and what was the 61840? 61840. We can come in here. I'm going to show you another row exit. This is from the address book and the payment profile. So there was a payment profile associated. So in the batch, it automatically took that payment profile, processed against it, and moved it forward. Now I'm going to come in here and actually remove that payment profile inside of payment profile address books, where we have the EasyPay implemented. And I'm going to come back here and let's do another one. Let's now do M30 61840. 61840. And now with this one, let me just go in here, M01, and create it. So I'm doing another use case scenario. The first use case scenario was if I was to look at order 303709. There's the 2 line items, and it's at 532,540, and that authorization occurred because we simply used the token for 303709. It was there, it was authorized. Now this use case scenario, which is workflow, and is the batch running?
Should be running every 2 minutes, I believe.
2 minutes. And once again, the information is in here. 3037. And there's the details for that prior sales order, where it's at right now, and you can see that it's only in an authorization stage. It's not closed. The status is still open. This is based on our workflow logic for order to cash. Now let's come back here, And this is now the 303710 that I just created, and I removed the payment profile, which shows that there is no payment profile. So in a case like this, let's and by the way, this is not realistic. Entering all of this information, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. When you sign up with a gateway, you determine which fields you want. It could be as simple as the credit card number and the approval. So I'm going to go ahead and add a payment profile. This is using the iframe redirect. Say I want to make it March of 2005. So the payment profile was added. So when we work with you, we ask you, do you want us to immediately take that payment profile and process against it, or simply tokenize it in the payment gateway, deliver back the token, show to the user that it's there, because we have additional functionality called split payments. So somebody could enter, it could be a $5,000 order and they want to put $3,000 on one card and $2,000 on another. So that's why it's a separate step then of the user processing the order, and the authorization was a success. So you saw it both ways. You saw it without a card profile. You saw it with a card profile. Now, let's go back here. So I covered the workflow automation, which is becoming increasingly popular because of cybersecurity and customers simply wanting to remove, things like not having their CSRs hearing the credit card numbers, and that eliminates that. And I did full authorization, and I did it from initially a card yes payment profile, and it just automatically batched through and a no. Now let's talk about prepay, and this is the last one here. And prepay gets into, say, credit unworthiness. There's a lot of different reasons for prepay. And the definition of prepay, if you look back at this slide here, it's authorization and capture. It's doing an upfront sale. And how do we handle that? And if I was to come back here, and I'll go back to JD Edwards, I'm going to create another order, and I am going to use 61250. And you don't put it there, 61250. And I create the order and look at the status. 303, 711. And I do a query on it. And it's at 532,540. It was successfully authorized. If I was to come here and look at the EasyPay row exit, you can see that it was authorized. In fact, I'm going to do something else. Because this is a little bit more complex, let's come in here and look at the details of that status at this point before I run sales update. So it's still open. We've only done an authorization. Now, because it's cash, look at what we've done. We've created at least an R9.2 and RU 2325. If I was to come back to JD Edwards and look at the general ledger, it's 2325. Yep. And there it is right there. And it's open. We simply created that ledger. It's open. I'm now going to go back into update customer sales and move that order along through order pick, ship confirmation, Sales update, invoice create. Okay, so I've just done that. If I come back here, this is kind of a picture of what we're doing in the background. I have Tom here if you have any technical questions. But if I do a refresh on 325, so we have a closed status. So we did that's still authorization, complete. Let's do the refresh. Aha, I got an email. So that email should indicate that a couple of emails. So I'm getting various emails here. You see those emails coming. So I know that the batch is processing. Thank you for your payment of $102. And then I have a successfully processed the amount, 303,711. And then I'm seeing, now this is interesting. This is the RU that I just created. Now, I was a little bit impatient there. If I go back and do a refresh on this, there we see that the, so we created 2 invoices. Oh no, here it is right here. I'm looking at the workflow that we're working against. Here's the invoices. So 2325, we created RU because that was the cash. We now created the RIs that are associated with us. If I clicked on the invoice here and come back to JD Edwards and do a find, there you can see it's cleared. If I was to go now to receipt drafts, there's the payment ID, the MasterCard that we paid it against. It's fully reconciled. So this is a little bit more complex because we're doing a sale, but hopefully you're getting the idea of how it works. So from that perspective, I worked through JD Edwards Interactive. I did workflow, full authorization, both with no card and with a card. I just did the prepay, showing how we're cash up front. We're generating an RU and then an RI to apply against. And then I'm going to pause here and just ask Allison if there's questions.
Yes, there is one more.
Okay.
So if this person understood correctly, the P4210 has been customized, has also the 42101. In case of JDE upgrades, ESU, SIR, how does that work?
Good point. It's a named event rule, and the person that's asking that obviously knows what I'm saying. Probably everybody here. We worked with JD Edwards. We thought, is there a way, because they want companies like us. So we worked with JD Edwards Denver, a lot of people that I knew when I was there, and we determined that there's no way to be totally non-intrusive. So we wanted to be as least intrusive to sales order programs and JD Edwards as possible, actually all the programs that we're working against. So it is a named event rule. We're touching, and Tom, you can verify this, we're touching like 4 lines in the P4210 with this named event rule, this paper fix, right?
Very minimal.
Very minimal. We can do it, generally companies, it's fully documented. You would do it, you'd have your CNC person do it, then promote it to test and production. Probably the best, most complete answer is it's fully documented. And I can send that. We do have the person asking that. Anybody else that wants to know about that level, those are implementation documents that we can share. But the answer is it is a named event rule, yes. So I've done through that. Let me also talk about, the JDE invoice collections. And that's where I was at a second ago. If I came back here, I'll close down some of these and just went to address book here and say 4646 and do a search and come up to the invoice collections. And once again, this directly relates to the question that was asked. If I was to do a question mark on this about, there's our like I said, JDE Oracle assigned a System 99 code so you can see what this is. And so from the perspective of these row exits that I'm showing, here's to enable functionality. And it's a parameterized SQL query, Tom, what, using OLE database or ODBC to JD Edwards tables, right?
Yep.
Okay. Either the production or some people have mirrored versions. But this is all real time. That SQL statement can, eliminate the credits. We're not doing that here. We do have, for invoices, we do have something called print. And let me explain this. This, what you're seeing right here, is auto PDF print. So inside of our platform, we can define inside of a form, and that's what this print button does. It creates a form, or it works against the form, and we're saying populate it with this header, populate it with line items here. I fully recognize companies have, Octio and Crateform and BI Publisher, and we can work against existing invoices, but I just wanted to explain if you wanted to do that. So now this is an invoice. This is an existing, net 30, say, AR terms invoice. If I was to come in here and select a couple of invoices, and let me do a refresh on here. So I selected that invoice. And received a payment. Those are the two invoices I selected. We have processing options that allow to, and I had it turned on. Do you want to force full pay or allow partial pay? I have it on partial pay. There's a payment profile that I can work with. So you're seeing some common characteristics. You're seeing like the payment profile, in a lot of different areas. And this is the payment information. It's settled, I can go into the invoice into the FO3B11 and show you that with the payment. Let me do something else related to that. Let me now move into, for the last 10 minutes, and I might go a little bit over because I now want to show the AR portal. So some people just use an AR portal. If you're going this route, you automatically get the AR portal with the solution. So an AR portal doesn't involve that named event role, obviously, because you're coming from a portal with real-time integration. By the way, we integrate to JD Edwards, the interoperability, XML call object. That's what I'm doing now, or BSSV, SOAP Web Services, Orchestrator, the AIS server, which is the REST APIs, tied to Orchestrator or independent. So it's fully integrated. So from an AR portal perspective, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to log out, and I'm showing it from two login perspectives. I'm showing it from a customer login and an employee login perspective. And let's first show it from a customer login, which is Patty Watson. So now, because it's a customer, we're automatically going to work against her customer master and preferences, and you can define what page you're going through. And this is Patty Watson, who's tied to address book 4242. In fact, if I was to come here to account home, you can see that's the account information, working profile, security, globalization. We have all of these things set. Globalization, you can default that if you wanted, so that it's automatically set with login or localization. Here, let me go to a page here that represents open invoices. And now you notice our portal. Here's that page. In fact, let me go to company code 200. That's where the invoices are going. If this is that page that you just saw that we enabled through the named event role inside of JD Edwards, but it's from the portal. And if I wanted to, select Spanish or Chinese or whatever, we use Google APIs. It creates a data dictionary so you can do an override. And that's Spanish, and I'll convert it back to English. We have some companies like Yum that have over 25 languages enabled. They love our approach, our platform approach using Google API, AI functionality. And so I'm looking at invoices here. Let's go through, and I showed that, the various account summary. What do you want pulled from the AR finance tables? It could be anything. These are requirements, discussions. This is one look and feel. The open invoices that I showed a second ago, and it worked exactly the same way. And you can do things like setting the company code. So if I was to, select these two, I have a processing option that says do partial pay. So I'm only doing $50 on that. So I come in here and I select this payment profile and I process the payment. And the authorization was success. Come back here to unapplied cash, another one. And with unapplied cash, I'm going to say I want to simply, as a customer, and you determine whether you want this or not. $140 at unapplied cash, 1, 2, 3. Come in here and process that payment. Working through JD Edwards, all the integration that I showed you before, it's settled. It's not a sales order, so we're just doing a straight settlement. If I was to come back here now to paid invoices, so paid invoices represents that partial payment of $51 and the $141, which is generated as an RU. I also made that payment of, here's the partial payment. So the amount paid was $50 on the full invoice, so $118. You see batch number, payment ID. I can go to JD Edwards, show it to you like I did before. You get the idea. And once again, on top of all of our grids, I could do things like take this invoice number, and this is all filtering on top of our grids, and there we are. And then on top of the grids, we also have an Excel export on all of the grids that I've shown you, and the Excel can be configured. The Excel can be configured to have more information, more fields than what you're seeing on the columns. In fact, we even have another button filter that allows the customers, if you wanted, or employees to select what they're seeing from JDE AR or even custom tables if you have information there. Let me show statements. Statements, we're using the auto PDF create to go in and document the invoices per the statements. We do have, and I told you we do customization. So this is an example of, creating invoice subscription. I'm not going to go through this. This is kind of one-off. You do that, you create a invoice subscription, and then you create a payment method. But I'm not going to get into that. That's kind of one-off. What is very relevant though is auto pay. So if I was to come in here as Patty Watson and say I want to do something auto pay, and I want to do it monthly, and today's say the 9th. And there's the one payment profile. And once again, in preferences, you can set up, hey, this person is tied to ACH, so you don't get hit with the fees. Do I want to pay all my invoice or just a partial amount? Let's just create, $222. Pay the first $222 in auto payment. And so I've just created an auto payment invoice. If I was to come back here to our batch jobs, and let me log out here and log in as admin. I'm going to run the batch. Okay, so here, let me go to admin old, work with batch processes, and I think it's It's down here, isn't it, Tom? Process auto payment. So this can be scheduled. It's not scheduled, so I'm just going to do a one-time run on it. So I'm executing it right now. I can look at the history for results, and it ran. The job started. We took that $222, we applied it to the oldest invoice. There's logic there. This is the invoice, and the job ended. And I can go into JDE Edwards and show you, but I'm running out of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to the portal portion. That's pretty much everything from there. Even, from the perspective of looking at things from a sales order perspective, looking at it down from there, and like here. So here's a query from a sales order working against JDE Edwards, referencing invoices from there. It's so integrated to JDE Edwards in every way, shape, and form. We work with you. We've got a messaging center. We've got a contact form center. Now, the difference between the portal, so you can do a lot just from the portal itself. If I was to now log in as Max Bourne as employee with the portal, now Max has to, he's an employee and needs to say, okay, I want to search on the address book and do an impersonate, or what we call on behalf. So now this is Paul doing an on behalf. And it's a little bit different, things like unapplied cash there. It could be Max saying, you know what, we need $400 because you're over credit limit, and send the cash receipt. And we're doing that. And the email sent out, and actually the batch processes are working faster now. So there is somebody paying that $400. People love the intelligent emails as a way of really moving the whole cardholder data, toxic data off of their prem. I hope you're getting a good idea of how that's working with these various use case scenarios. But I come back here to unapplied cash. If I was to now look at paid invoices, there's that $400. Max could come in now and apply that $400 and pay invoices against an RI invoice, depending on how you have it set up. So you can see things work a little bit different from the Max perspective. Max also has various reports, like failed transactions. We've got that in admin too. So we're covering all the different scenarios, the various, transaction reports that we're getting here with filtering up on top. Once again, I'm going to refer back to, the use cases. So I just did the portal from a Patty Watson doing various things, from Max doing an over credit limit. Max could also set up the invoice auto pay, obviously, on behalf of, you get that idea. The last thing real quick is to show you from an e-commerce perspective. So if I was to, say, come in here, and let's log in. Paul Johnson. So now I'm logged in as Paul Johnson. I could do things, look at the menu. Looks very, very familiar. So I'm Paul Johnson. Do I want to do online invoice pay? Or from the perspective of an e-commerce, ours or Magento, or like I showed you with Christie's, where we're API-based. Do I want to come in here, and take a couple of items and add it to the shopping cart, and go to the shopping cart, and go through the checkout, and selecting delivery is requested. And let's select credit card. and I hit submit. And what comes up, I think to everybody in the audience, this should start looking familiar. It's our payment. And by the way, split payments against multiple, that's what I wanted to show. I probably should have entered another profile and conduct a split payment. This is in JD Edwards, both as a sales order and, you know, tied to our credit card engine, our JDE credit card engine. I went over about 10 minutes. I'm so sorry. I did cover everything, though. Should have kept the PowerPoint a little bit shorter. Allison, any questions?
No, there are no more rates.
Okay. Everybody, sorry about the going over a little bit. Thank you very much. Allison's gonna follow up with the slide deck and inquire if you want us to do any level of discussions, requirements. We love doing proof of concepts with customers. Thank you again for attending this webinar. Bye now.